The court, that too. The Court Family Fund for Visiting Authors underwrites the residency of Ann Patchett this week at Chautauqua, as well as Jane Hamilton's presentation today. This generous support is inspired by Georgia Court in loving memory of her late husband, John. At Chautauqua, John and Georgia, along with fellow Chautauquan Mary Ann Moorfield, were instrumental in the transformation of Alumni Hall into the Literary Arts Center at Alumni Hall, and Georgia has been deeply involved in the growth of the literary arts at Chautauqua. So let's thank her now, and let's thank ourselves for support of Chautauqua. The Chautauqua Literary and Scientific Circle is one of the oldest book discussion groups in this country. Each class, since the first in 1878, has created a banner to honor reading. I choose one class banner each week to accompany the week's theme and the book selection. I've chosen my own class banner honoring the theme of this week and today's books and my last CLSC introduction. The class of 2008. 2008, reading is great, and the banner with the slogan, Sowing Seeds of Wisdom. Commonwealth tells the story of one chance encounter irrevocably changing the lives of two families. Told with humor and heartbreak, Commonwealth explores our 2017 vertical theme of community by exploring the ownership of stories, what they are, who's allowed to tell them, and how. Ms. Patchett is the author of 10 books, 7 fiction and 3 nonfiction. She has received the Orange Prize, the Penn Faulkner Award, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and the Women's National Book Association's Award. This is her second trip to Chautauqua and her second appearance on our platforms this week. Frankie Lombard is fiercely devoted to her family's sprawling apple orchard and the complex relationships of her relatives who inhabit it. However, she's forced to face reality. Not everyone stays on the farm forever. Ann Patchett has said that The Excellent Lombards is the book Jane Hamilton was born to write, and it is a book, she says, that thrilled me to read. Jane Hamilton is a novelist who has published 7 books, including The Book of Ruth, which won the Penn-Hemingway Award for First Fiction, and A Map of the World, a New York Times Notable Book of the Year, and also later adapted into film. She graduated from Carleton College as an English major, after which she met her husband at a friend's apple orchard. Ms. Hamilton currently lives in a Wisconsin orchard farmhouse with her family, where she's been inspired to write all of her novels. So, ladies and gentlemen, farmers, orchardists, people who sow seeds of wisdom, writers and readers, folks from complicated families, please join me in welcoming Ann Patchett and Jane Hamilton to the Chautauqua Literary and Scientific Circle.
Hey, thanks for that blurb. That was really
That was
nice
my
of you.
complete pleasure. And can I see this? If I go back to the first page. My name is Sherra Babcock. I serve Chautauqua, period. You've done such a good job, Sherra, serving Chautauqua.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I came here last year, and the reason that I came back this year was only because I liked you so much. And it's serious.
Are these mics working? The sun'll come out
Tomorrow.
Can everybody hear?
I just Can you all hear? Okay, good. All right.
What I was going to say is that we should maybe pick up from your discussion with Michael Ruhlman, in which he love him so much, but he refused to acknowledge that cooking is hard, particularly for women. And I would say that Commonwealth explores that as one of its themes, actually.
Yes, we're trying to give a nod to Food Week here, and start with food, but there seemed to be some giant confusion that cooking was hard, as in I wasn't quite smart enough to get it, that kind of hard, which is not at all what I meant. But Jane and I are really good friends. That we should probably say that. We've been really sort of besties for 15 years. and we read each other's work and edit each other's work. And so we are here together just so we could hang out in our adjoining hotel rooms with an inner door and just talk and talk and talk.
We're hoping we have a little something left to say in
Yes.
this hour because we have been talking since Monday.
So a lot, and a lot of what we've been talking about was Michael Ruhlman, and what a super great, smart guy he is, that and yet didn't seem to understand anything at all about what a drag it is to make dinner every single night of your life on Earth.
Yeah.
Women.
Wasn't it amazing? He said, just whip up a little tomato sauce from fresh tomatoes and add the onion, and then anyway.
And he kept saying, well, I could come and show you and make it not hard for you. And I'm like, the depth to which you are not getting this.
But Commonwealth is about the oppression of food preparation, culminating, I think, in that most wonderful scene involving lobsters.
Yes, and I actually have been thinking about this because it also starts off at this party in which the hostess of the party, who is so beautiful, is in the kitchen making more tiny sandwiches and getting no help, and her husband very kindly comes in and berates her best friend for not helping, as opposed to perhaps helping himself, which never once enters his mind. And he says, look at this woman, she should have servants, she's so beautiful, why aren't you helping her? So it does set up the air of oppression. We will at some point talk about how both of our books have autobiographical elements in them, and I will say that the most autobiographical part of Commonwealth is the scene in the Hamptons where Franny is just having to cook another meal and another meal for all the people who drop in until she finally lets the lobsters go, because no one can free her from the tyranny and oppression of her hostessing duties. Therefore, she frees the lobsters. But I mean, and the Excellent Lombards is really essentially a book about food, about our nation's food basket, about how feeding a family, a community, and a nation in the small American farm can go on.
That's true about succession, but also it's about the oppression of the harvest that you have desired is upon you, and then, holy shit, how are you going to pick all the apples? How are you going to sell all the apples?
Do you feel that every year in your life?
Oh, no. Yes. Oh, my God. That's why I'm here in Chautauqua. The apple season has begun. Yes. Bye. Don't work too hard, I say, going out the door.
And do you climb the trees with a basket? Or do you just have to cook for all the people who climb the trees?
I cook for the crew, and I grow a huge garden, and that is a wonderful pleasure and
privilege.
Picking apples is actually very hard on a person's body because you have this bag around your neck, and you fill it with 40 pounds, and you're climbing up a ladder. So, and I have done that, but I no longer do it. My other duties have freed me from the hard farm labor.
This is actually a question I'm sure I know the answer, but you don't ever do the shake the tree, like
No.
with cherries?
No.
But they do that with cherries in Michigan.
They do.
They just put some clamp on the tree and shake it really
Yeah.
hard. And all
No,
the cherries
we
fall
have
off.
some varieties where you have to pick them so carefully because they bruise when you pick them. So they're very delicate. Anyway, yes. So food as oppression, food as a great graciousness also.
I never got to that. There is no food as great graciousness. And I was thinking, and it wasn't until we decided to talk about this that I started thinking about it. The very end scene in Commonwealth where the mother is hiding in the kitchen, rearranging the pedophores by color because she's too afraid to go out to the Christmas party and deal with everyone. So it's also food as hiding. Do you guys ever hide with the food? Like my sister and I all but fist fight one another at the end of big family meals to do the dishes because we want to get away from everyone so passionately that we just want to scrub the pans.
Yes, and there's also that situation when you've set up everything perfectly and you're ready for the guests to arrive, and then they arrive and you just think, no, stay away, do not enter. But I have to say, just in terms of revenge. There's a couple of beautiful revenge. I know we're moving away from food.
We are, yeah.
But
trying to follow.
I reread Commonwealth in the last couple days while I've been here, and I've read it many times. And so I had the pleasure of reading it again, and it makes me cry every time, and I love it so much. But I'd sort of forgotten that moment when Teresa, the mother, puts her children on the plane to fly across the country to the now ex-husband with no luggage. And you are the best person I know, and you are kind, and this book reveals what a good person you are because you are so fair-minded and you treat everyone tenderly. But that moment of revenge that Teresa has is pure joy.
Yeah, and I kind of always want to go back to the true story. In these two particular books verses, so a lot of people have said to me, did that happen in your childhood? Did your stepfather's first wife actually send the children to visit with no luggage? No, she never did anything like that. But once she sent them with kittens, and once, when my younger stepbrother was coming to live with us, she bought him a Labrador Retriever puppy, like on the way to the airport.
Oh my!
Bye. So yeah, there is a lot of very subtle revenge. How anger plays out quietly. And one of the things that's so great about Frankie is that her anger is really writ large. She is, in a way, the opposite of our grown-up female heroines, Nellie and Beverly, because Frankie's furious and she wears it right in front of her chest all the time.
Frankie is my narrator in the Lombards. Well, here's a difference between the book. You're writing from the third person. Oh, you can't hear us. The sun'll come out tomorrow. Can you hear us now? Okay.
If we just sing it all, would it be better?
The thing about Frankie is in this book, woo! Now you're really hearing. It's written from the first person. It's all about being in the land of. Now I'm getting gestures from the sound man. We are in her head, and the beautiful thing about writing an adolescent character is that they are wrong so much of the time, and they're also right, and so there's that wonderful tension. But your book is written in the third person.
Let's stay on your book. Let's stay on your book for a minute. That's the problem with having two of us do this at once. No, you.
Well, what was
Frankie's anger.
Oh, her anger. Yes, she's angry because she is deranged by love for her family. And I think anytime we write a book, we are speaking to other books as well as writing the book that we wish to write. And I think you could speak to this with Commonwealth. But before I wrote this book, I read A Member of the Wedding, which, and the title character.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, and the title character is named Mary Frances, and I don't think that book could be published today. That character she is so angry, and I think the editor would just say, oh, why didn't she get some pharmaceuticals to help her out? And she also stabs the African-American housekeeper, which would not go down well today. She not fatally, but she is so bitter. And I remember reading that book and loving it so much and loving that teenage rage. And that girl is so filled with fury. And so I took a little gene from her and put her into Mary Frances. Although, they have different problems. Member of the Wedding wants to leave her family, and Mary Frances she's deranged by love, and she cannot bear the fact that time is passing and that, she's going to grow up. She cannot bear that.
Isn't it interesting, though, when someone is deranged by love, it still just feels like derangement. It doesn't feel like love at all. Let's talk about the way in which your book is connected to your family, and also how you dealt with it. The way Jane and I work is that we read our books out loud to one another when we finish. So either I go to Wisconsin or she comes to Nashville, and we lie on the sofa and we read the book aloud. And it's really kind of excruciating because you don't ever realize the mistakes you've made until you're reading them aloud to your novelist friend.
It's the best time I've ever had while having really debilitating stomachache, I would say.
Because we ate so much candy?
No, because, you hear the you hear the clunkers, and, I love you so much, and I also really respect your brain like no other, and I want it to be good for me, but I want it to be good for you. And there's the fear of, you start in reading, and what if her thought bubble is, Holy Mother of God, what the hell? And, I have to listen to this thing for 3 days? Shoot me now.
Shoot me now, yeah.
So there's that issue. Yes, we read our, that's great.
So your book was finished before mine, but here's the deal. As long as I have known Jane, she has been saying that she is going to one day write the farm novel. She's one day going to write the farm novel that is really about her experience, her life, her family, life on the farm, the apples, and you had been kind of going up to it and swerving for a long time. And your decision to finally write the farm novel before I ever read any of it was a lot of my decision to write Commonwealth, because I thought, well, if you can write the farm novel, I can write the parents get divorced and marry other crazy people novel. And one of the things that struck me so hard when you were reading me your book is that you said you weren't going to have the people in your family read it. You were just kind of hoping that they wouldn't go to the bookstore. So, and then when I finished reading Commonwealth to you, and you said, how are you going to talk to your family about this? And I said, I Xeroxed copies and mailed it to every single person in my family. And you said, what an enormous mistake that was. So I want you to talk about, it's sort of like it's all true and it's not true. It's made up, it's real, it's not real.
It's true.
How did that all work out?
Clearly, I want to say Ann Patchett is a much better person than I am.
I am a much better person than you are, yes. But
you're
the better novelist.
Pshaw.
Pshaw.
I live on a family farm, which I have done for now 38 years, and any family business is very rich material. And so I have been thinking all these years, how can I turn away from this gift from the gods, this material? But then, it's the family. So I ran into my agent one time in New York, and she said, what are you working on? And I said, oh, blah, blah, blah. And she said, oh no, listen, don't do that. That is the worst idea I've ever heard. This is why you don't say plots. Anyway, she said, I don't know why you don't write about that family farm that you live on. And I said, well, I have to wait until the relatives are dead. And she said, well, you'll be dead too. She said it just like that. So that got me to thinking. The problem with the life lived and trying to write a novel about it is that you have a lot of material. And I could have written a 3-volume saga about this family, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go the Jane Smiley route. And really, I wanted to write a poem. And I wanted to write a poem about matters of succession in a family business, who gets to stay, who can't stay, who stays but shouldn't stay, who stays but is the one who wields the power, all of those matters. How are you going to pass it down? And so I decided to put it into the body of a 14, 15, 16-year-old girl who just loves this family and this farm so much she can hardly bear it. So that was my decision. there's a lot of conversation in the world right now, in our culture and within our tribes. Who gets to tell any story? Who is authentic enough to tell? Who has suffered enough to tell? All of those questions. So who gets to tell? And, at the basic level, the person who gets to tell is the person who has the privilege of putting the rear in the seat for however many years is required to tell. And, I was prepared to tell my husband's relatives that, this was Frankie's story, my story, sort of, not really. It morphed into its very own thing. But I would love it if they wrote their story, their narrative, because we all have our own version. I just happened to be the one to set this version down. Happily, my husband was quite worried about this because, again, it's fiction. I used the roles of everybody in my real family and plugged characters into it. But still, people might see themselves. And happily, my husband's family are not readers. They did not go to the library.
So there really wasn't ever a showdown?
No, the only possible future showdown could be when the bookstore from Evanston brings their busload of people to the local library, where Chef Jacqueline will cater a lunch, and then I'll give a talk, and we'll have apple tasting, and then we'll walk over hill and dale to the farm, and they'll buy apples, and hopefully no one will say, "Are you Dolly? I just really..." And so we'll see. I'll get back to you on that.
I kind of pictured the other half of the family behind a low stone wall with wormy apples, pitching them over at the tourist as they come across.
But let me say that the thing that you did, one of the brilliant new things you did in your book is that you have Leon Posen writing the book, and you have the relatives in the book responding in the novel, so you give them a response already.
A violent and angry response. Yeah, it's true. I said this yesterday in the Women's Club, and I don't know if I've told this to you or not. I was trying not to so I could tell it to you on stage. That I interviewed Zadie Smith. Did I tell you the whole Zadie Smith thing?
No.
So I interviewed Zadie Smith in Nashville. I have this bookstore, and so I interview people all the time now. And I was talking to her about her last novel, Swing Time, which is a terrific book. Did you read Swing Time?
I did.
I really liked it.
I loved it.
I just thought it was terrific. So in the book, it's the biracial daughter. Mother is Jamaican, father is English. She wants to be a dancer. She doesn't have any talent as a dancer. And it's very much Zadie, So I said to her on stage, you're using autobiographical elements, and how are people responding to this, and how do you feel about it? And she said, well, there are autobiographical elements, but I'm not the daughter, I'm the mother. And she said, and I'm not the mother in the book. It's that the mother in the book is the kind of mother I'm afraid that I'm going to be. And so by writing this mother, that's sort of me making sure that I won't be this kind of a mother to my own children. And I thought that was the best explanation of what writing autobiographical fiction really is. Because yes, my book is so autobiographical, but in that way of Leo Posen, I'm writing out my fears. I'm writing because I'm afraid I'm going to hurt people. So I hurt them in the book, and therefore I won't hurt them in real life. Wow. And I'm just kind of playing out different scenarios, sort of like Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. And that's what's so great about writing fiction. You can write out all of your possible scenarios in life. Also, I gave all of the characters in the book a much better outcome than they have in their real lives. And I made them better looking. And Elizabeth McCracken said to me once, you can always write about real people as long as you make them better looking.
You have a great line, and is it Franny who says it? I can't remember.
Our characters also have the same first names, which we hadn't planned on.
No, but
The moose is
bell.
here.
She says, or someone says that, in the writing of this novel, Leo Posen has made something lasting and beautiful, and given the story a shapeliness, and I think Franny herself probably would say that Leo was the best person to have written that narrative, that he was the one who had the gift to do so, and even though of course it was fiction. But maybe everybody should be so lucky to have Ann Patchett in their family to write their narrative.
Well, it's interesting because separately, both of my stepsisters have said, oh, I made this new friend recently, and they asked about where I was from, and I just gave them a copy of Commonwealth. Fantastic! We can save you all the work. Yeah.
One of the things that I love about the book, and we're veering, but just structurally, and I remember, listening to it, and the way you dispense information. We hear about the death of Cal long before we learn about the particulars, and you just mete out the details backwards, really, and and yet you're never confused. And I know, you've said, and you've probably heard Anne say, that she has the novel in her head before she sits down to write. That was an awful lot to keep in your head, an awful lot of characters.
But it was really easy because they were like chess pieces, and I used my own family to hang, just exactly what you said, to sort of put fictional people on the real people. So I could keep up with everybody without any problem. One sister's the mute, one sister's the Nazi, one sister's the really cheerful one who can't ever shut up. Yeah, all the parents. It really worked out quite well.
Well, oh, good. All right. Well, still, it's impressive. It's impressive.
But don't you do that too, to some extent? Don't you get it worked out in your head?
I do not get it worked out in my head.
How do you do
my
it?
Poor head. My poor head is very rattly and filled with kind of this muddy substance.
Silt. Head silt.
I have, a couple of characters, and I have the voice, and I have the trouble, and I know the last line. So the writing is a journey to that last line, which could change in the course of the writing, but I don't know what's going to happen much. And so it's very inefficient, and it's just, getting that first draft out, which is the work that you've done without writing. But I feel that my brains are in my hands, which is why I have to have a pen at all times. Just I'm required to think.
It's too sad for me to throw out huge chunks.
What?
No, it's true. I mean, I know you do this, and Elizabeth McCracken does this, where you'll write 100 pages, and you'll learn from it, and then you'll toss it out.
That is true.
And that just makes me want to throw up for days. Did you ever write another version of this farm novel? Like years ago, did you ever take a stab at this? Because I know you've been talking about it.
Well, you don't because you're a pure being, but many of us watch such great television. And I'm
too busy cooking dinner.
One of the pleasures of watching these great series is that the writers, plot-wise, just get themselves in this tangle, and so you have to watch to see how they're going to get themselves out of the fix. And we're in this very plot-rich time in our culture in terms of narrative, and so I sort of thought that this book, I was frightened. And I thought that anyone who's writing a novel today has to have this super duper amazing plot. And I had Mary Frances and her family and everything, but I superimposed this plot on it, which involved two lesbians who move up from Chicago and live next door to the farm, and they adopt a nun who's escaped her convent.
I read that draft.
Yes, you did. What's that place? It's along the coast of the Mississippi in western Wisconsin. She escapes her convent, and she comes to the farm and lives with the lesbians, and Mary Frances is watching this situation, and then she disappears, and her body turns up a year later in the marsh when Sherwood and the Muhlenbach boys are like, ah, and there's her body, and it was so bad. And I sent it to you, didn't read it out loud to you. I will never forget this. And we arranged to have a phone conversation, and you said,
remember this, oh God.
My married name is Willard. You said, Mrs. Willard, may I be frank with you? When Miss Patchett says that, you know, you don't say no. You say yes. And you were wonderful. And the thing that I had to trust in myself again is that the province of the novel is the passage of time, and that really what the novel does best is explore the sorrow about the passage of time and the wonderment of that. And so you have a plot, but you don't need all these you don't need the nun, it turns out.
The dead nun. And just to follow up with the rest of that story, which I had really forgotten, I had put that behind me. But hold that moment right there. Mm-hmm. That is a really hard spot to be in.
Yes,
and it's a spot that you only want to be in with somebody that you really love. And somebody said to me, I think it was even today at lunch, what do you do if you read a novel that a friend has written and you don't like it? And I said, if a friend gives you a novel as a stack of paper and is a very close friend who has asked for your true opinion, you give it to them. And at any other time you say, I love the novel. Because, I mean, once it's published, friends, once it's published, no one wants to hear it from you, okay? If you hated the book, keep it to yourself. I can't actually do anything about it at this point. So when I read The Business About the Nun, and I really thought, this is Jane. She's on the railroad tracks, and I've got to tell her the truth. And I thought I was the first person to read this book. And so I give you my harsh judgment and tell you you've got to get back in there and tear it apart and redo it. It was a really, really hard thing to say. And I said, so has anybody else read the book? And you said, our mutual friend Karen, last name blank. You said, Karen has read it. And I said, oh, wow, okay, well, what did Karen say? Do you remember this?
Sort of.
And you said, Karen said, it's an American masterpiece.
Oh, okay, Karen's the best person to give anything to because she says that whatever you give to her.
Oh, man.
But if she doesn't.
I was on the phone to Karen I was like, okay, I got to hang up now. Karen, but the dead nun? You didn't try to save Jane Hamilton from the dead nun?
Yeah, but if Karen says it's terrible, you know it's so terrible, truly terrible. Anyway, but I want to get back to plotting. Let us leave the nun behind. When you were reading Commonwealth to me, we got to the part where Albie is the bike messenger, and he is given the book Commonwealth, and he reads the first 3 paragraphs, and he knows what this book is. And I remember bursting into tears at the beauty of that plot twist.
It's a very sad moment in the book.
It made me so happy. It was just the way you brought everything together was beautiful.
And I have to say, that was something that has been very interesting to me, and one of the things I really wanted to do in this book, the idea that someone else knows something about your life that you yourself don't know, and you read it in a book. And I just thought, what an amazing idea.
I'd like to ask you about your interest in Buddhism. We have like 2 minutes left.
Okay. Are you interested in Buddhism?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably, but.
Do you want to meditate after this?
Totally. No, that chapter where Teresa goes to Switzerland and does her meditation is it's a very deep chapter and the way the whole book kind of comes together in that chapter, and she has the vision, and it's really, so I guess I have two questions. A, when you were planning this book in your head, did you know that moment where she has the vision?
No.
Okay. That makes me feel sort of better. Because that is, because when you're reading the book, it's kind of the fulfillment, it's one of the fulfillments, and it's a very deep and affecting moment, and I just love it so much.
Thank you.
But I just wondered if you wanted to have Teresa have her Buddhist experience because Buddhism has been helpful to you.
That whole thing about Teresa and Buddhism is threefold. One, I meditate, I'm a wannabe, and it's an important, helpful part of my life. Two, I have put way too many dream sequences in previous novels. And Elizabeth McCracken said to me at one point, it was in State of Wonder. There were a lot of dreams, and the dream sequences were very long. And she said, if I have to read one more helpful dream sequence in a Patchett novel, I'm going to come out and break your teeth or something. It was very violent. And so I really have leaned heavily on dream sequences in the past. And so I thought, well, how could I have a dream sequence that wasn't a dream sequence? Because I wanted some way for her to access this information. So therefore, she sort of sees this as a vision while meditating. But three, and the most important thing, is that my stepsister, who is a character whose name I can't remember, who's the daughter who's at the Buddhist temple?
Holly.
Holly. I wasn't going to get that. Like, I could have sat here for another half hour and I wasn't going to get Holly. Okay, so my stepsister Tina, who has a tough life, and she is a therapist, and she is a psychic. And when I say she is a psychic, she attended the Berkeley Psychic Institute and is the Reverend Martina Barnes. And then after being a professional psychic for years, went back to school, got her degree, and is a therapist. But it's hard. And I thought, if I could give Tina a gift, if I could put her anywhere in the world where she would be so perfectly happy, I would put her in an ashram in Switzerland. That's what I would wish for her. And a lot of the book really is, for each character, this is what I would wish for you. I wish that you would get over the place that you're stuck and move into this land of perfect beauty. And that's what's so wonderful about the novels, being a novelist, because I feel like in real life everybody got stuck and got stopped, and in the book they push on. So the idea of setting her in this safe, beautiful place was really wonderful. Also, Teresa had died in the book, and I felt bad, and that's not a spoiler, she's not such a major character, and everybody dies anyway. But she dies, and in the moment she dies, I felt really sad. Like, she wasn't such a big character in the book, and then I killed her, and I was like, oh man, I really liked her so much. I'm just going to bring her back in the next chapter.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I'm going to bring her back, and I'm going to give Tina the life she should have had, and it's going to be just a big cupcake for everyone. So that's why it happened. And just if we each get to ask a closing question, and that was your closing question, just to establish that. I want to talk about the first chapter of the Excellent Lombards, which is the most, I think maybe like the most perfect piece of writing ever. It's so energized. It doesn't go where we expect it to go. It sets up the book that this is a family headed for catastrophe and death, and it totally doesn't happen, and the father pulls it out, and the rain doesn't come, and when the rain comes, they just are in a second before. It's so perfect. And I wonder if you wrote that first. I wonder if you wrote it 1,000 times. And I wonder if you saw that first chapter as the encapsulation of the whole book.
Yes. And thank you for your kind words. I always knew that was the start of the book. And speaking of autobiography, my son, who's 32, one time we were talking about the farm. This was maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago or something, and he said, I don't know how to even talk about how I feel. Actually, we weren't talking about the farm exactly. We were just talking about him and his future, and he was saying, I don't know how to say what I want to say to you. And I'm thinking, are you going to tell me you're gay? I mean, and I said, whatever you're going to tell me, I love you no matter what. And he said, no, it's nothing like that. And he said, it's just, this is how I feel about the farm, and it's not, I don't have words for it, but it's an image. And he told me about that real life thing that happened with the making of the hay, and the storm is coming, and they're about to be killed, and then Pa, his father, just, and it was so, the way he described it, and it holds our life really, as well as the book. And so really, I would say, in terms of the relatives, my biggest concern about writing that book was using that image that he had told me in a private conversation. And because I'm a bad person, I felt that I couldn't ask his permission, because what if he said no? I would have to honor it.
Always ask forgiveness, never permission.
And I mean, that image is it's so potent and dear to my heart. And
You never told me that.
It had to be.
This is why we have to come to Chautauqua and put microphones on our ears, so we will really realize the full truth.
I think that I was ashamed of it, actually.
How did Ben feel about it? Not that his name is Ben, it's not.
So I gave him the book when it was all published, no turning back. And then he drove home one day and he said two things. A, you have got to talk with the relatives. The book hadn't come out yet. You have got to. And I just have never felt so ashamed of myself, and like I was in the principal's office with my son as principal. It was such an odd moment. And I said, well, I just want to, I said, okay. And then I must have said something about my apologies for using the hay thing. And we both burst into tears. And he said, no, it was really beautiful.
Oh.
And I didn't talk to the relatives because I just thought, I don't talk to the relatives in the first place. And so, like, walking up to them and saying, okay, now we're going to really talk. I mean, I love them. They're really they're wonderful people. I mean, and I made them, I do feel that I brought lyrical tenderness to them, and they're so much crazier.
Did you make them better looking than they are?
Yeah. So anyway, no, they're good people. So
this question is going to sound like a joke, and it's not. Do you feel that you're sort of the heir apparent to Laura Ingalls Wilder, or is there a line between you and Laura?
I cannot believe you said that.
You almost fell off your stool when I said it.
Because my mother has been on her deathbed for a really long time. And I've been reading the Laura books really recently, and I'm here to tell you, they are great.
They are.
They're still great, and I realized when I was reading them that I was speaking to those books, which I hadn't, because I've read them a lot. I read them to my children a lot. But I understood that lineage, so thank you for reminding me of that, and yes.
Oh, that's so good. So good. So we are going to answer your questions, and you don't look at, and there are microphones, and you're going to come to the microphone, and nobody's going to be crazy and ask us about politics or something. So, because you already know how we feel. All right. Hi.
Hi. For Ann Patchett, I know that Bel Canto was an opera on PBS. Will it ever be a movie?
The movie for Bel Canto has been shot. It is in the can. They are editing it. But, the business is run by squirrels, and it can there's still a perfectly good chance you'll never see it. But Julianne Moore is Roxanne Koss. Renee Fleming did the singing, and Gen Watanabe is Mr. Hosokawa, and until I can go to the Green Hills Regal Cineplex in Nashville, Tennessee, and buy a ticket, I won't believe in it.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen anything.
Thank you.
Do you want to take that side?
Both of you have been speaking about books that are somewhat autobiographical or you can draw upon your real life. State of Wonder knocked my socks off, and I loved how authentic your voice was and all the great detail. Did you relocate there? What can you describe the process?
I just make it up. I mean,
You did go on a trip down
I did go on a trip when I was almost finished with the book. I did go on a trip in the Amazon. I was with a guy who pulled a 15-foot anaconda into the boat. So I was inspired in a lot of ways. But yeah, I did research. I did a lot of research into malaria. That was really fun. I could give an hour lecture about mosquitoes that would blow you away. But the vast majority of things I just make up. But thank you.
My name is Edna Sternad, and I'm been a long-time devoter of Ragdale, and your interchange reminds me so much of that artists and writers colony on the prairie in Chicago, and I wish you would tell everybody here about it. Jane Hamilton, you particularly have been so closely connected with it.
Well, and Anne has been there too, and you've
I've
also...
never been there as a fellow, though.
No.
I only did a fundraiser.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Ragdale Foundation is a artists community on the prairie of Lake Forest, Illinois, and if you're a writer or a painter or a dancer or a composer, you should apply and go there, and you get space and time. And there's many communities. There's Yaddo, there's Hedgebrook, there's so forth and so on, and these are refuges for people who need space and time. The Ragdale Foundation certainly made really my writing life possible at a certain point. So they are great places. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm here with my book club, and I had a question. Basically, what is your best advice for someone, hypothetically, who has a very full schedule and little kids, but wants to make writing a more regular part of her life? Like, how do you fit it in when you have other things that are so necessary in life to tend to?
You had 2 kids.
Well, I would say that the most important difference in my era and your era, and I had little children, and it was hard, but I really wanted to do the thing. But we were free back then because there was no email, there was no the internet. And really, really, we were free. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think the best advice I could give anyone is unplug.
Yeah, and I will say, 2 things. One, I wrote an incredibly long essay called The Getaway Car, which is every single piece of writing advice I have on this earth, and it is in the book, This is the Story of a Happy Marriage. And you can also buy it as a single for $1.50 on the internet. And I love a piece of advice that Liz Gilbert gives. And she said, if you were married and you had a couple of kids and a job, and I won't look at you when I'm saying this because it's not the case, but you were having the hottest affair of your life on the side, and you would find 20 or 30 minutes every day. You would find it even if it was in a stairwell because it was so unbelievably central to your existing on this planet. Writing should be that. Okay.
I just want to get back to Commonwealth for 1 second. One of my favorite insights in the book is that people have affairs because they just want to get away from the kids.
Yeah. Next question, sir.
Yes, I have 2. One, a specific one for you, Jane, and that is, have you ever thought of doing the Eugene O'Neill trick and writing the definitive, honest family novel, but not let it be published until everybody's dead?
I just did not understand what you said.
I understood what he said.
Okay.
The Eugene O'Neill trick of writing the definitive family novel that would be published posthumously.
Oh, stay tuned.
Okay. and then I had just a general question I've always wanted to know, and I got two wonderful authors here. Maybe you can answer it for me. As somebody who's read a lot of novels, and once in a while you get waylaid by something else that you have to read for work, or you don't get, and you have to go back to the book, and where the hell did this character come from? And why do novels not have what every nonfiction novel or every nonfiction book has, which is an index?
Because we think you're smarter than that, and maybe we're wrong. But
you put me in my place, thank you.
People said that to me all the time. It should be like 100 Years of Solitude. There should be a family tree in the front. And I was like, knock yourself out, people. Just use your brain. You can figure this out. This is not so hard.
Although I have to say,
I'll go humbly back to my seat now.
No, it's that I think you're smarter than that. You don't need that.
but wouldn't you say that the Elena Ferrante novels, the guide to the characters was essential? Because, and you know, there's Alberto and Alfonso.
Because
and
that's exactly right, because they have exactly the same names. That it's Lena and
Lenu. I could not have gotten along without that guide. And call me stupid, but you know.
Sir.
I agree. I think Tolstoy could definitely use an index for the longer ones. But one of you, maybe quoting the other, said that the province of the novel is something about time past. But then, Anne, you said that you also give people the futures you want them to have in some cases in the novel. I couldn't help wondering if those two might be connected, that you mourn past time because things didn't play out the way you hoped they would for some of the people. And so, I don't know, I just wondered if you could tell us more, having now teased us with this idea that novels can somehow serve as redemption for the futures you hoped people would have.
I'm trying to think of a new way to answer it so it doesn't sound like something I've already said. But yes, I want to give people a better chance. And also, man, in life, people tend to go in more of a straight line than you would suspect when you're young. It's one of the best things about getting old and having all of these siblings. And also, I have a lot of friends who have been my friends since we were in first grade. And I have a lot of cousins. I have a lot of people in my life who I have known for my whole life. And they are remarkably who they were when they were 5. And we all just kind of ticked along like flatliners. And if we had all met fortune tellers when we were 5 and they had written out our future, it would probably look remarkably, if the fortune teller was honest, it would look remarkably like what really happened. And the thing about the novel is that you kind of elevate people and continually lift them up. When you're young, the great thing about children is that every door is open. And that's why we say to children, what do you want to be when you grow up? And no matter what they say, we say, oh, you want to be an ambulance driver, you want to be a brain surgeon, you want to be a fireman, you want to be president. Oh, that's just wonderful. And that to age it's a series of doors shutting. Every day a door shuts. And you're not, I'm sorry, am I breaking news to you? You're all
the sun'll come out tomorrow.
And actually, I would suggest that the doors shutting is a great thing too. It's a loss, but it's also a focusing of one's energies. We're probably not going to be president. Probably what we're selling our kids is a bill of goods about the hopefulness for their future. But in a novel, when you're an author, you really can give them that beautiful future that you would have wanted for all of those children who are going to have average lives. Because we really all have average lives. Sorry. Except you guys, because you're here. It's beautiful. Next. Okay, these are the you and you, right. Oh, I'm sorry, and I didn't see you there, so let me answer this, and then I'll turn swivel for you. Hi.
In Commonwealth, Fanny tells Leo that she doesn't drink because of some incident in her past.
Yeah.
And he says, did you kill anybody? Did you hurt anybody? No. Then later in the book, she does in fact drink with some of her relatives.
Right.
But you never explain what that incident was, or even if it was a fictitious thing. And I'm curious.
Yeah, no, I do explain.
You do? I missed it.
There was a car accident. She says there was a car accident. It was her fault. No one was hurt, and she stopped drinking.
Okay.
And I think that it's really important in fiction that you have to figure some of those things out for yourself. So I feel like if I say that much, then you would be able to imagine a scenario in which a 15, 16-year-old girl is drinking too much, is in a car accident where no one is hurt, and she is scared enough to stop drinking, and that I don't actually need to kind of spell it out. Although, madam, you are not the first person to ask me that question. And then later she does drink because she just changes her mind and she feels like having a drink.
Thanks.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. I was struck in Commonwealth by the care the characters gave their dad, even though they didn't see much of him. And then afterwards, I read the story of a happy marriage and the essay about going to the LA Police Academy and
Yep.
the connection you had with your dad. And what hit me in that essay is you said you saw him 1 week a year.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how, with such limited contact, you developed such a close relationship with your dad. I mean, the writing about it was beautiful, but it didn't explain how it got there. I mean, it was not a time of the internet and Skype and all that.
You know what? He was my dad. And it was back in, my parents got divorced. I was born in 1963. My parents got divorced when I was probably 4 years old. They were in California. And when you divorce somebody in the 60s, the woman got the child and they could do whatever they wanted to. And so my mother moved across the country with her boyfriend. And the two things in my life that have gotten cheaper are plane tickets and long-distance phone calls. So my dad got off, he had a week's vacation a year. It took all of his savings to buy 2 plane tickets to bring him out, bring my sister and I out every year. And we talked on the phone on the 2nd of every month.
Wow.
Now, once I was in college and things changed, I started going out to California all the time. We wrote letters to each other. It never occurred to me or to my father that not being close was an option. That's who we were. My sister and my father were incredibly close. We loved each other. You know, that was it.
Well, I thought it was just really beautiful how you wrote about it, and
Thank
just
you.
the limited contact. I mean, I grew up with my dad, so I thought, wow, to have that beautiful relationship.
And you know
I was
what's
really
so funny,
struck by
because
it.
my dad was a cop and he was really impossibly difficult. And somebody, he was a cop. He was a poor kid from South Central LA who went into the seminary to be a priest and couldn't stop dating girls, and so became a cop. And he was just a perfect combination of the priesthood, the Navy, and the LAPD, and he was going to make you do what you were supposed to do. And I really, truly believe that if my parents hadn't gotten divorced when I was 4, I probably would have never spoken to my father again. But the fact that we had an entire country between us, and we only saw each other a week a year, meant that we loved each other madly, and we were really close. So sometimes things just work out.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
I'm thinking, can we answer her question? She's looming. Hi.
I am looming, sorry. I have a question. How much do you think not going through university in a creative arts English program, and also the issue of age, has to do with becoming a writer?
You got an MFA, I didn't get an MFA.
You take it.
Well, I'll just say I mean, my experience was that being in my own bubble and doing the work without thinking about, and reading, but not worrying about what was happening in the wider world was really important to me, just to develop and to figure out what I had to figure out. Would my career have advanced more quickly if I'd been in an MFA program? I don't know, but I know that for me, just being in a place where no one was writing or that I knew, and I just worked at the forums myself, was really good and important to me. And I think that anybody who feels the urgency to write, no matter your age, or whether you're in an accredited institution, that doesn't matter. You have to sit and do the work, and you have to read, and you have to commune with yourself and really respect the time it takes to make something beautiful and meaningful. So, you don't need college for that, and you can do that at any age.
And I will say that because I own this bookstore and everybody in the world knows how to get in touch with me, I get a letter every day of my life from somebody who says, my kids are in college, I really want to get an MFA. People like you tell me that MFAs aren't important, and you've gotten so far, and you're in the club, and I'm not in the club, and I want to get in the club, and I want to have the advantages that you've had. And it's weird. Like what I always am hearing is people saying, you got the break, I didn't get the break, you're the writer, I want the break, I want your experience. Don't tell me an MFA isn't important. They write to tell me this. And what I always say is, if you take the energy that it takes to wonder whether or not you would be a writer if you had an MFA, and you just wrote, 99.9% of the people who go through MFA programs, who go through summer writing workshops, who pay people good money to teach them how to write, are not making a living off of writing. And it is a Ponzi scheme that absolutely sickens me. That we are making all of this money. It's like if we had schools of optometry on every corner, and only 1% of those people could ever get a job as optometrists. Would anybody say that perhaps the system wasn't working? So if you think that you're being shut out, and I don't mean you specifically, I mean general you, of anything by not having an experience in a creative writing program, get on your knees and thank God and write.
So it's just a matter of sitting down and getting started.
That is what it is a matter of.
Thank you very much.
Just keeping your rear end in a chair exhaustively is what it is all about.
Thank you.
Should we just conclude by bringing it back to the beginning, and that is that I learned that there are more men taking cooking classes than women now. The end.
Thank you, Chautauqua.